Eric King's sweat drips onto the Tok plant specimen, triggering an explosive growth spurt that shocks everyone in the alien research facility. The human botanist stumbles back, his eyes wide as the plant's tendrils twist and elongate at an alarming rate. Alarm chitters and rustles fill the air as the Tok scientists crowd around, their leaf-like appendages quivering with a mix of fear and fascination. In the center of the commotion stands Cleo, a young female Tok scientist. Her chlorophyll-rich skin pulses with an intensifying green hue as she steps forward, her voice a melodic rustle. "I volunteer to investigate further," she announces, her curiosity overpowering the cautious murmurs of her colleagues. The research facility, a massive biodome nestled in the heart of the Tok homeworld, buzzes with tension. Holographic displays flicker with rapidly changing data as the Tok scientists struggle to comprehend the implications of Eric's perspiration on their biology. The human's presence, initially a gesture of interspecies cooperation, now threatens to upend centuries of Tok scientific understanding. Under the watchful eyes of both species, Cleo and Eric begin a controlled experiment. Eric's heart races, sending beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. As a drop lands on Cleo's outstretched limb, her reaction is immediate and intense. Her entire form shudders, and a viscous, sap-like substance begins to ooze from her pores in copious amounts. The room falls silent save for the soft patter of Cleo's secretions hitting the laboratory floor. Eric's face flushes red, recognizing the parallels to human arousal. Cleo, equally shocked, struggles to process the unfamiliar sensations coursing through her plant-based body. News of the incident spreads rapidly through the Tok communication network, a complex system of chemical signals and root-like transmitters. The Tok elders convene in an emergency session, their ancient forms towering over the younger generation in the council chamber. "The human must leave immediately," one elder declares, his bark-like skin creaking as he gestures emphatically. "This discovery threatens the very fabric of our society." Cleo, still glistening with residual sap, bursts into the chamber. "We cannot squander this opportunity," she argues passionately. "Eric's bodily fluids could be the key to overcoming our species' vulnerability to dehydration." As the debate rages, a group of extremist Tok, their forms twisted into menacing shapes, plot in the shadows. They see Eric's sweat as a potential weapon, a means to revolutionize their planet's delicate ecological balance. Sensing the growing danger, Eric grabs Cleo's hand. "We need to go now," he urges. They flee the facility, plunging into the dense alien forest surrounding the research complex. Strange, bioluminescent plants light their path as they navigate through a maze of carnivorous flora and poisonous spores. Back on Earth, the incident sparks a diplomatic crisis. Government officials scramble to contain the situation, recognizing both the potential benefits and risks of Eric's discovery. In a secure facility, a team of special ops soldiers receives their briefing. Extract Eric and Cleo at all costs. As Eric and Cleo push deeper into the wilderness, their bond grows stronger. They share knowledge of their respective biologies, marveling at the unexpected compatibility between their species. In a moment of rest, Eric's hand brushes against Cleo's leaf-like skin, sending a visible shiver through her photosynthetic cells. The Tok military mobilizes, their bioorganic vehicles surging through the forest in pursuit. The stage is set for a confrontation that will shape the future of human Tok relations. Exhausted and hunted, Eric and Cleo stumble upon the entrance to a hidden cave system. As they stand at the threshold, they face a crucial decision: wait for human extraction or return to Tok society and fight for acceptance of their interspecies connection. The fate of two worlds hangs in the balance, all because a human botanist made an alien plant girl wet. Eric and Cleo exchanged a meaningful glance as they stood at the cave entrance. The distant sounds of pursuit echoed through the alien forest, growing louder with each passing moment. Without a word, they plunged into the darkness of the cave system, their decision made. The air grew cooler as they descended, their footsteps echoing off the damp stone walls. Eric's hand found Cleo's leaf-like appendage in the darkness, their touch sending a familiar tingle through both of their bodies. As they ventured deeper, a soft blue glow began to illuminate their path. "Eric, look," Cleo whispered, her voice a melodic rustle. The walls of the cave were covered in bioluminescent fungi, their delicate tendrils pulsing with an otherworldly light. Eric's scientific curiosity overtook his fear as he examined the glowing organisms. "Incredible," he breathed, reaching out to touch one. "These could be our key to survival down here." As they explored further, they discovered a vast underground chamber filled with the luminescent fungi. The space provided both light and shelter, a perfect temporary base for their improvised hideout. Eric and Cleo quickly set about establishing a makeshift living area, using their limited supplies and the natural resources around them. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine of research and survival. Eric's botanical expertise paired with Cleo's intimate knowledge of Tok biology led to fascinating discoveries about the cave's ecosystem. They found that certain varieties of the fungi were not only edible but highly nutritious for both human and Tok physiology. Their forced proximity in the confined space of the cave only intensified the strange physiological reactions between them. Each time Eric's sweat made contact with Cleo's plant-like skin, her sap-like secretions flowed more freely. They noticed that prolonged physical contact resulted in a pleasurable sensation for both of them, a tingling warmth that spread through their bodies. One evening, as they sat side by side analyzing a particularly interesting fungal sample, Eric's hand accidentally brushed against Cleo's arm. The contact sent visible ripples of energy through Cleo's chlorophyll-rich skin, and Eric felt a surge of warmth course through his veins. I've never experienced anything like this," Cleo admitted, her leaves quivering slightly. Eric nodded, his face flushed. "It's fascinating from a scientific perspective, but also intimate in a way I never expected with a non-human species." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the weight of their situation, hunted fugitives on an alien world, seemed to fade away. But the moment was broken by a distant echoing sound from the cave entrance. "We need to find a way to communicate with the outside world," Eric said, snapping back to their predicament. "There must be others who would support our research if they understood its potential." They set to work, repurposing parts from their research equipment to create a rudimentary communication device. Hours turned into days as they tinkered and tested, all while continuing their studies of the cave's unique ecosystem. Meanwhile, beyond the sanctuary of their hidden cave, events were unfolding rapidly. The human special ops team, led by the stern-faced commander Marcus Steele, had established a base in an abandoned Tok outpost. Steele stood over a holographic map of the area, his eyes narrowed as he studied the terrain. "Any sign of King or the Tok female?" he asked his team. A young technician shook her head. "Nothing yet, sir, but our scanners are picking up trace amounts of human perspiration mixed with an unknown biological compound. We're getting closer." On the other side of the dense alien forest, General Zor of the Tok military was facing his own challenges. His leaf-like appendages twitched with frustration as he received reports from his specialized plant-based drones. "Intensify the search pattern," he ordered, his voice a harsh rustle. "They cannot hide forever." Unbeknownst to both the human and Tok forces, a third player had entered the game. Dr. Alara Vex, her eyes gleaming with scientific avarice, watched from her cloaked ship as both sides scrambled to locate Eric and Cleo. "Patience," she murmured to her team of mercenaries. "Let them do the hard work of finding our targets. We'll swoop in when the time is right." Back in the cave, Eric and Cleo made a breakthrough in their research that would change everything. As they examined a hybrid strain of fungus that had been exposed to both Eric's sweat and Cleo's sap, they noticed something extraordinary. "Eric, look at the cellular structure," Cleo exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. "The fungus has incorporated elements from both of our biological makeups." Eric leaned in, his eyes widening as he observed the sample under their makeshift microscope. "This is incredible, Cleo. If we can replicate this effect on a larger scale, it could revolutionize Tok agriculture, maybe even solve your species' vulnerability to dehydration." Their celebration was cut short by a low mechanical hum that reverberated through the cave. Eric and Cleo froze, realizing that their hiding place had been discovered. The sound of Tok drones grew louder, echoing off the cave walls. "We need to move," Eric said urgently, gathering their research materials. Now! They stood at a junction in the cave system, facing two possible paths. One led upwards, potentially towards the surface, where they might have a chance to broadcast their findings and appeal for peace. The other descended deeper underground, promising temporary safety, but risking isolation from any potential help. The buzzing of the drones grew louder. Eric and Cleo looked at each other, the weight of their decision heavy in the bioluminescent glow of the cave. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance as they prepared to make their choice. With a shared nod of understanding, they plunged deeper into the cave system, the sounds of pursuing drones fading behind them as they descended into the unknown. The path grew steeper and more treacherous as they ventured further underground. Eric's hand found Cleo's leaf-like appendage in the darkness, their touch sending a familiar tingle through both of their bodies. The bioluminescent fungi that had lit their way earlier became sparse, leaving them to navigate by touch and instinct. After what felt like hours of careful descent, the narrow passage suddenly opened into a vast, cavernous space. Eric and Cleo stood at the edge of a precipice, their eyes widening in awe at the sight before them. Stretching out as far as they could see was an ancient Tok underground city, long abandoned and forgotten by time. Massive plant-based structures towered above them, their organic forms twisting and intertwining in a breathtaking display of bioarchitecture. Bioluminescent vines snaked along the walls and ceilings, casting an ethereal glow over the entire cavern. "By the first seed," Cleo whispered, her voice filled with reverence. "I never knew such a place existed." Eric stood speechless, his scientific mind racing to comprehend the implications of their discovery. As they cautiously made their way down to the city floor, they marveled at the advanced biotechnology that surrounded them. Living buildings pulsed with a faint energy, dormant but not dead. "This could be the perfect place to continue our research," Eric said, excitement building in his voice. "We'll be safe here, and who knows what kind of resources we might find." They set about exploring the ancient city, their earlier fear replaced by an insatiable curiosity. In one structure, they discovered a cache of well-preserved food stores, solving their immediate survival needs. Another building housed an array of sophisticated plant-based tools and instruments, far more advanced than anything in the modern Tok world. As they delved deeper into the city's secrets, Eric and Cleo stumbled upon a sealed chamber. The door was made of a thick, transparent material that resembled amber. Through it, they could see row upon row of cylindrical containers, each holding what appeared to be plant specimens. "Eric, look!" Cleo exclaimed, her leaves quivering with excitement. "These are extinct Tok plant species. Some of them haven't been seen for millennia." Working together, they managed to unseal the chamber. The air that rushed out carried the scent of ancient vegetation, earthy and complex. Eric carefully lifted one of the containers, examining the preserved plant inside. "These specimens could be the missing link in our research," he said, his eyes gleaming with possibility. "If we can unlock their genetic secrets, we might be able to create a hybrid that combines the best traits of both our species." Over the next few days, Eric and Cleo threw themselves into their work. They set up a makeshift laboratory using the ancient Tok equipment, combining it with their own expertise to analyze the extinct plant species. Their proximity in the confined space of the lab intensified the strange physiological reactions between them, their bodies responding to each other in increasingly powerful ways. As they worked side by side, Eric found himself acutely aware of Cleo's presence. The soft rustle of her leaves, the gentle pulsing of her chlorophyll-rich skin, the subtle scent she emitted, all of it filled his senses. For her part, Cleo found herself drawn to the warmth radiating from Eric's body, the beads of sweat on his skin calling to her on a primal level. One evening, as they pored over a particularly promising sample, their hands brushed against each other. The contact sent a visible shiver through Cleo's form, and Eric felt a surge of heat course through his body. They locked eyes, the air between them charged with an electric tension. "Eric," Cleo said softly, her voice a melodic whisper. I think we need to explore this connection between us. For science, of course." Eric nodded, his heart racing. "For science," he agreed, his voice husky. As they moved closer together, their bodies reacting with increasing intensity. Neither of them noticed the subtle changes taking place around them. The bioluminescent plants in the lab began to pulse more brightly, and long-dormant machinery hummed to life, responding to the unique energy signature of their interspecies intimacy. Outside the ancient city, unbeknownst to the absorbed couple, events were unfolding rapidly. Commander Marcus Steele and his team had tracked Eric and Cleo's trail to the cave entrance, only to find themselves in a tense standoff with a group calling themselves the Symbiosis Seekers. These Tok-Tok, who believed in the potential benefits of human Tok-Tok cooperation, had formed a blockade to protect the fugitive pair. Steele stood at the edge of the blockade, his face a mask of frustration. "We have orders to extract Dr. King and the Tok-Tok scientist," he called out to the protesters. "We mean them no harm." A Tok-Tok with vibrant red leaves stepped forward, their voice a defiant rustle. "We cannot allow you to interfere with their important work. The future of both our species may depend on it." As the two sides faced off, neither willing to back down, General Zhor of the Tok-Tok military grew increasingly impatient. In a controversial move, he ordered the deployment of defoliant bombs, intending to strip away the forest canopy and expose any hidden entrances to the underground system. The first bombs fell with a sickening hiss, leaves withering and falling in their wake. The Symbiosis Seekers watched in horror as their beloved forest began to die around them. Their cries of outrage were echoed by many Tok-Tok across the planet, as news of the drastic action spread rapidly through their root-like communication network. Taking advantage of the chaos, Dr. Alara Vex and her team of mercenaries slipped past both the human and Tok-Tok forces. Using advanced scanning equipment, they located a hidden entrance to the underground city and began their stealthy descent. Deep below the surface, oblivious to the turmoil above, Eric and Cleo's exploration of their newfound intimacy reached a fever pitch. Their alien physiologies intertwined in ways neither had thought possible, sending waves of pleasure and sensation through both their bodies. As they reached a shared climax, a burst of energy radiated from them, triggering a cascade of reactions throughout the ancient city. Bioluminescent plants pulsed in rhythm with their unions, growing and spreading at an accelerated rate. Dormant systems within the city whirred to life, responding to the unique combination of human and Tok-Tok essence. And far above, on the planet's surface, the forest erupted in a frenzy of growth, fueled by the amplified effects of Eric and Cleo's combined life forces. As the rampant vegetation quickly overwhelmed the Tok-Tok military's defoliation efforts and began to encroach on populated areas, panic spread among the surface dwellers. The Symbiosis Seekers, however, saw this as a divine sign of approval for human Tok-Tok cooperation, their movement gaining significant support in the face of this miraculous event. In the depths of the ancient city, Eric and Cleo lay entwined, basking in the afterglow of their union. They were blissfully unaware that their actions had set in motion events that would reshape the future of both their species and the planet itself. As the machinery around them hummed with renewed purpose and the plants pulsed with vibrant life, they knew only that they had discovered something beautiful and profound, a connection that transcended the boundaries of their different biologies. Little did they know that multiple factions were now converging on their hidden sanctuary, each with their own agenda. As they drifted off to sleep, exhausted but content, the ancient city stood guard over them, its long, dormant defenses stirring to protect the catalysts of its reawakening. Awakening. As Eric and Cleo slumbered, intertwined in their post-intimate embrace, the ancient city hummed with renewed purpose. Unbeknownst to the sleeping couple, their union had triggered a cascade of events that would reshape their world. A soft, barely audible buzz filled the air as millions of microscopic plant-based nanobots awakened from their long dormancy. These tiny marvels of Tok-Tok biotechnology had once been the city's primary defense system, programmed to repel any foreign entities that might threaten their subterranean sanctuary. Now they swarmed through the air, drawn inexorably towards the unique biochemical signature emanating from Eric and Cleo. As dawn broke, Eric stirred, his eyes fluttering open to the soft bioluminescent glow of the chamber. He felt different, somehow more attuned to his surroundings. Beside him, Cleo's leaves rustled gently as she too began to wake. "Good morning," Eric murmured, his voice still thick with sleep. As he stretched, he noticed a faint green tinge to his skin. "Cleo, look at this. Something's changed." Cleo's eyes widened as she examined Eric's altered complexion. "Fascinating," she whispered, reaching out to touch his arm. As her leaf-like appendage made contact, both gasped at the heightened sensitivity. "Eric, I feel different, stronger somehow." Their attention was drawn to the shimmering cloud of nanobots that had gathered around them during the night. The tiny machines danced in intricate patterns, responding to their every movement. "What are they?" Eric wondered aloud, watching as the nanobots formed complex structures in the air. Cleo's scientific curiosity overcame her initial apprehension. They appeared to be some form of nanoscale biotechnology. "Incredible! I've never seen anything like this in modern Tok society." As they marveled at the swarm, Eric's gaze fell upon their research equipment. "We should run some tests," he suggested. "Maybe these nanobots are related to the growth accelerator we've been working on." They set to work, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization as if they had been partners for years. As they combined samples of their bodily fluids with the ancient plant enzymes they had discovered, something extraordinary happened. The resulting compound glowed with an otherworldly light, pulsing with potential. "Eric, look!" Cleo exclaimed, her leaves quivering with excitement. "The growth rate is off the charts. And there's something else." She extended a tendril towards the mixture, and as it made contact, her entire form seemed to vibrate with energy. "Are you all right?" Eric asked, concern evident in his voice. Cleo's eyes shone with wonder. "More than all right. I feel rejuvenated. The compound, it's not just accelerating growth, it's enhancing my physiology." As they continued their experiments, neither Eric nor Cleo noticed the subtle changes occurring in their own bodies. Eric's skin became more sensitive to light, his eyes adapting to see new spectrums. Cleo's plant-like appendages grew more flexible, more responsive to touch. Their work was interrupted by a low rumble that shook the chamber. The walls began to shift, panels sliding away to reveal hidden passages and sealed rooms. Eric and Cleo watched in awe as the ancient city reconfigured itself around them, responding to their presence. "It's as if the city is evolving," Eric breathed, taking in the newly revealed marvels of Tok biotechnology. As they explored the newly exposed areas, they came across a room unlike any other. At its center stood a cylindrical pod, its surface covered in intricate, pulsing organic circuitry. Inside, clearly visible through the translucent material, was a Tok unlike any Cleo had ever seen. "By the first seed," Cleo gasped, her voice filled with reverence. "This is an ancient one, from before our current evolutionary state, a living link to our past." Eric studied the stasis pod, his scientific mind racing. "Do you think we could revive it?" he asked, his voice hushed with the weight of the possibility. Before Cleo could respond, a distant sound caught their attention. The echo of footsteps and voices reverberated through the passages, growing closer. "Someone's coming," Eric whispered, instinctively pulling Cleo closer. The nanobots around them responded instantly, forming a protective barrier that shimmered with potential energy. Eric and Cleo stood before the ancient Tok stasis pod, their bodies subtly altered, surrounded by the city's awakened defenses. As the footsteps drew nearer, they faced a monumental decision. Should they awaken this ancestral being and potentially unlock the full power of the ancient city? Or should they focus on finding a way to control the rapid growth that was surely consuming the surface world? The weight of two worlds rested on their shoulders as Eric and Cleo prepared to face whatever came through that door. Their newfound bond stronger than ever. Their newfound bond stronger than ever. As the footsteps grew louder, Eric and Cleo exchanged a determined glance. They had come too far to turn back now. "We need to awaken it," Cleo said, her leaves rustling with anticipation. "This ancient one might hold the key to understanding what's happening." Eric nodded, his heart racing. "Agreed. Let's do it." They approached the stasis pod, their hands moving in perfect synchronization as they searched for the activation mechanism. The nanobots surrounding them intensified their protective barrier, forming an iridescent dome that pulsed with energy. As Eric's fingers brushed against a hidden panel, the pod hummed to life. The organic circuitry flashed in complex patterns, and the translucent material began to dissolve. The ancient Tok within stirred, her form unfurling like a flower greeting the dawn. Cleo gasped, her leaves trembling. By the first seed, she's awakening. The ancient Tok's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that swirled with bioluminescent patterns. She took in her surroundings with a mix of confusion and curiosity, her gaze lingering on Eric and Cleo. "I am Zara," she said, her voice a melodic whisper that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the chamber. "You have awakened me from my long slumber. But why? And what has become of our world?" Eric stepped forward, his skin now tinged with a more pronounced green hue. "I'm Eric, a human scientist, and this is Cleo, a modern Tok. We've discovered this ancient city, and we need your help." Zara's eyes widened as she examined Cleo more closely. "Fascinating. Your evolution has progressed far beyond what we had projected." Her gaze shifted to Eric, curiosity evident in her swirling eyes. "And a human, I never thought I'd see the day when our kind would forge such a bond." As Zara stepped out of the pod, the nanobots swarmed around her, seemingly recognizing her presence. She raised a tendril, and the tiny machines danced in intricate patterns at her command. "These nanobots," Zara explained, her voice filled with a mixture of pride and concern, "were our last line of defense, a failsafe designed to protect and potentially revive our civilization in the event of catastrophe." She looked at Eric and Cleo intently. "Your bond has activated them, but I fear the consequences may be more far-reaching than you realize." Cleo's leaves rustled with excitement. "The surface. The forest is growing at an unprecedented rate. Is that connected to the nanobots?" Zara nodded gravely. "The city's systems are attempting to terraform the planet back to its ancient state. If left unchecked, it could render the surface uninhabitable for both your species." Eric's mind raced with the implications. "We need to stop it. Can you help us control the nanobots?" Before Zara could respond, a distant explosion shook the chamber. The sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors, growing closer. "We don't have much time," Eric said urgently. "We need to access the city's main control systems." Zara led them swiftly through a series of hidden passages, the walls shifting and reconfiguring around them. As they moved, Eric and Cleo noticed their bodies continuing to change. Eric's skin became more sensitive to light, allowing him to navigate the dim corridors with ease. Cleo's appendages grew more articulate, effortlessly interfacing with the city's organic technology. They reached a vast chamber dominated by a pulsing bioorganic computer. Zara placed her tendrils on the interface, and holographic displays sprang to life around them. "We must reprogram the nanobots," Zara explained, her voice urgent. "Redirect their efforts from terraforming to stabilizing the ecosystem." As they worked, combining Zara's ancient knowledge with Eric's human perspective and Cleo's understanding of modern Tok biology, the sounds of conflict grew nearer. Commander Steele's voice could be heard barking orders, while the screech of mutating soldiers echoed through the halls. Eric's fingers flew across the holographic interface, his newly photosynthetic skin allowing him to absorb energy directly from the city's bioluminescent plants. Cleo's enhanced appendages wove complex patterns in the air, translating their commands into the ancient Tok language of the city's systems. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. A new holographic display appeared, showing a countdown timer. "No," Zara whispered, her voice filled with dread. "We've triggered the purge protocol. If we don't stop it, the city will release a massive energy surge, destroying everything here and devastating the surface." Eric and Cleo shared a determined look. They had come too far to fail now. As the sounds of battle drew ever closer and the countdown ticked away, they raced against time to save not just themselves, but two entire species in the world they called home. The chamber shook with another explosion, closer this time. The nanobots swarmed more frantically, responding to the increasing threat. Eric, Cleo, and Zara worked feverishly, their bodies and minds melding with the ancient technology as they fought to avert catastrophe. Catastrophe. The countdown timer continued its relentless march, each passing second bringing them closer to destruction. Suddenly, the chamber door burst open with a thunderous crash. General Zor's mutated soldiers poured in, their bodies a grotesque fusion of plant and human anatomy. Vines writhed beneath their skin, and their eyes glowed with an unnatural green light. "Protect the interface!" Zara shouted, her tendrils weaving complex patterns in the air to manipulate the nanobot swarms. Eric and Cleo moved in perfect synchronization, their altered bodies responding to the threat with newfound agility. Eric's photosynthetic skin pulsed with energy as he dodged a soldier's lunge, while Cleo's enhanced appendages lashed out, entangling another attacker. As the battle raged, Eric felt a bead of sweat roll down his forehead, mixing with a drop of Cleo's sap on the chamber floor. The combined fluids sizzled as they touched the damaged biotechnology, and something extraordinary began to happen. A mass of plant matter erupted from the spot, growing at an impossible rate. It twisted and writhed, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. Eric and Cleo watched in awe as the creature, born from their combined essence, turned its attention to the mutated soldiers. The plant creature moved with surprising speed and purpose, its tendrils wrapping around the nearest soldier. Instead of crushing its opponent, the creature began to absorb the soldier, integrating the mutated biology into its own mass. "Fascinating," Zara breathed, momentarily distracted from her work on the interface. "It's a perfect hybrid of your genetic material, adapting and evolving in real time." The chamber shook violently, and a new alarm blared. Holographic displays flickered, showing multiple breaches throughout the city's outer defenses. "Commander Steele," Eric realized, his eyes widening. "They must have found a way to counteract the nanobots." As if in response to his words, the swarms of nanobots surrounding them began to flicker and falter. The protective barrier weakened, allowing more of Zor's soldiers to pour into the chamber. Cleo's leaves rustled with grit as she interfaced with a nearby console. "The EMPs they're using are causing power fluctuations throughout the city. We're losing control." Eric joined her at the console, their altered biologies allowing them to work in perfect tandem. As their hands brushed against each other, they felt a jolt of energy pass between them. Their cellular structures began to merge and separate in a mesmerizing dance. "Eric, Cleo," Zara called out, her voice urgent. "Your transformation is accelerating. We need to use this to our advantage." The ancient Tok guided them through the process of interfacing directly with the city's mainframe. As Eric and Cleo's bodies continued to merge at a cellular level, they found themselves able to perceive the complex web of the city's biotechnology with unprecedented clarity. Together, they managed to slow the Purge Protocol's countdown, but the system resisted their attempts to halt it completely. "There's only one way to stop this," Zara explained, her bioluminescent eyes pulsing with intensity. "We need to reach the city's core and physically alter its primary biotech components." The plant creature, having absorbed several more mutated soldiers, had grown to an immense size. It turned its attention to Eric and Cleo, a spark of recognition in its primitive awareness. As if understanding their intent, it began to clear a path through the chaos of the battle-torn chamber. "We need to move now," Eric said, his voice resonating with a new harmony that mirrored Cleo's own. "The core isn't far, but we'll have to fight our way through." As they prepared to leave the relative safety of the central chamber, the displays showed new developments on the surface. The human Tok research teams had made a breakthrough, developing a compound to temporarily slow the forest's growth. "They're buying us time," Cleo observed, her leaves quivering with a mix of hope and urgency. "We can't let them down." The group set off, led by the ever-growing plant creature. Eric and Cleo moved as one, their partially merged forms allowing them to navigate the city's shifting architecture with ease. Zara followed close behind, using her knowledge of the ancient systems to guide them towards the core. As they progressed deeper into the city, they encountered pockets of ancient Tok technology that sprang to life at their approach. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing glimpses of a civilization at the height of its power, and the catastrophe that drove them underground. "Our ancestors' hubris led to this," Zara said softly, her voice tinged with sorrow. "We thought we could control nature itself. Instead, we nearly destroyed everything." They fought through waves of mutated soldiers and malfunctioning defense systems, their unique abilities growing stronger with each challenge. The plant creature continued to absorb and integrate everything in its path, becoming a formidable guardian. Finally, they reached the outskirts of the city's core. Before them stood a massive chamber housing a bioorganic supercomputer of staggering complexity. Pulsing tendrils of light crisscrossed the space, connecting to countless nodes and interfaces. "This is it," Zara announced, her voice filled with a mix of awe and trepidation. "The heart of our ancient civilization. From here, we can stop the purge and restore balance to both our worlds." But as they stood on the threshold of their goal, Eric and Cleo realized the true cost of their mission. To interface with the core system and make the necessary changes, they would need to achieve an even deeper level of symbiosis. "If we do this," Eric said, looking into Cleo's eyes, "we might not be able to separate again. We could become a single hybrid entity, permanently." Cleo's leaves rustled softly as she considered the implications. "Is it worth the risk?" she asked, her voice a whisper. Before they could decide, a new wave of attackers appeared at the far end of the chamber. Commander Steele's team had finally broken through, their EMP devices disrupting the city's defenses. At the same time, General Zor's remaining forces converged on their position. Caught between two advancing threats, with the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance, Eric and Cleo faced the most crucial decision of their lives. The core chamber beckoned, offering salvation at the cost of their individual identities. Time was running out, and the choice they made in the next few moments would determine the future of both human and Tok civilizations. Eric and Cleo shared a final knowing glance. In that moment, they made their choice. "We have to do this," Eric said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Cleo's leaves rustled in agreement. "For both our worlds." They reached out, their hands and tendrils intertwining. As they touched, a surge of energy coursed through them. Their bodies began to glow, cells merging and restructuring at an incredible rate. The process was exhilarating and terrifying, a rush of sensations unlike anything they had ever experienced. Zara watched in awe as Eric and Cleo's forms blurred together, becoming a single shimmering entity. When the light faded, a new being stood before her. It was neither human nor Tok, but a perfect blend of both, tall and slender, with iridescent skin that pulsed with bioluminescence. Delicate leaves sprouted from its arms, and its eyes held the depth of ancient forests. "We are Erico," the hybrid entity said, its voice a harmonious blend of Eric and Cleo's. "And we're ready." Without hesitation, Erico strode into the core chamber, followed closely by Zara and the ever-evolving plant creature guardian. The massive bioorganic supercomputer loomed before them, its pulsing tendrils of light creating a dazzling display. As Erico approached, the supercomputer seemed to come alive. Holographic interfaces sprang up, recognizing the hybrid entity as a perfect fusion of human and Tok. Erico placed their hands on the main console, and immediately a flood of information coursed through them. "The system, it's granting us full access," Erico marveled, their fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "We can see everything, the city's entire network, the nanobot swarms, even the forest on the surface." Zara's tendrils waved excitedly. "Quick, we must stop the purge protocol." Erico nodded, diving deep into the city's programming. Their enhanced mind processed the complex data streams with ease, unraveling the ancient Tok code and rewriting it on the fly. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. Commander Steele and his team burst through the outer defenses, weapons at the ready. Steele's eyes widened as he took in the scene before him, the merged form of Eric and Cleo interfacing with the ancient technology. "Hold your fire," Steele ordered, raising his hand. He approached cautiously, his gaze fixed on Erico. "Eric? Cleo? Is that you?" Erico turned, their bioluminescent eyes meeting Steele's. "We are both and we are more. We're trying to save everyone, Commander. Will you help us?" Steele hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. "Secure the perimeter," he commanded his team. "Protect them at all costs." As Steele's forces took up defensive positions, Erico returned their focus to the task at hand. They could feel the city's systems responding to their touch, the purge protocol slowly losing its grip. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Dr. Ilarovex frantically input commands into a makeshift console. Her eyes gleamed with a manic light as she pored over the Tok genome data she had stolen. "Just a few more adjustments," she muttered, her fingers flying across the interface. "And I'll have control over every living thing in this godforsaken place." But as she worked, something went wrong. The data influx became overwhelming, flooding her enhanced senses. Vex screamed as her body began to twist and change, merging with the very biotechnology she sought to control. Back in the core chamber, Eriko felt a sudden shift in the city's network. "Something's happening," they announced, their brow furrowing in concentration. "The surface, the forest growth, is slowing." Zara's tendrils waved in excitement. "You're doing it! Keep going!" Eriko redoubled their efforts, redirecting the city's resources to repair the damage caused by the rapid forest growth. As they worked, they felt a presence in their mind. The plant creature guardian had evolved further, developing telepathic abilities. Through this new connection, Eriko gained an even deeper understanding of the city's vast network of nanobots and plant life. They used this knowledge to fine-tune their adjustments, bringing the surface ecosystem back into balance. Just as victory seemed within reach, a bone-shaking roar echoed through the chamber. General Zor, now a nightmarish fusion of plant and human, smashed through the final layer of defenses. He towered over them, a mass of writhing vines and mutated flesh. "You think you can stop me?" Zor bellowed, his voice distorted and inhuman. "I'll destroy you all and take this power for myself." Eriko stood firm, their hands still connected to the city's mainframe. They knew they couldn't disconnect now, not when they were so close to stabilizing both worlds. But facing Zor while still linked to the system would be nearly impossible. As Zor lumbered towards them, Eriko made a startling discovery within the city's programming. There, hidden deep in the ancient code, was a function that could change everything: the ability to create stable, individual hybrid forms. With this knowledge, Eriko realized they had a choice to make. They could separate back into Eric and Cleo, retaining some of their enhanced abilities. But doing so now, in the face of Zor's onslaught, could jeopardize everything they had worked for. Time seemed to slow as Eriko weighed their options. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, with General Zor's monstrous form bearing down on them and the delicate process of ecosystem stabilization still underway. Whatever they decided, they would have to act fast. Eriko's mind raced, searching for a solution that would allow them to complete their vital work while defending against Zor's attack. The plant creature guardian stood ready, awaiting their command. Commander Steele and his team took aim at the approaching monstrosity, but their weapons seemed woefully inadequate against Zor's mutated form. As Zor's massive, vine-covered fist raised to strike, Eriko knew their next move would determine the future of both the underground city and the surface world. In that split second, Eriko made their choice. They poured their consciousness into the city's systems, activating long-dormant defense protocols. The chamber walls came alive, sprouting tendrils of living metal that snaked towards Zor with astonishing speed. The mutated general roared as the tendrils wrapped around his limbs, momentarily halting his advance. But Zor's newfound strength was too great. With a flex of his monstrous muscles, he tore through the restraints, shredding them like paper. The chamber shook with his fury as he continued his charge. Eriko's mind raced, multitasking at an unprecedented level. They continued the delicate process of stabilizing the surface ecosystem while simultaneously manipulating the city's defenses. Their fingers danced across the holographic interface, initiating a complex sequence of commands. "Commander Steele, fall back," Eriko shouted, their dual-tone voice reverberating through the chamber. "We need to contain him." Steele and his team retreated, taking up defensive positions around the perimeter. The plant creature guardian, now evolved beyond recognition, positioned itself between Zor and Eriko, its massive form rippling with newfound power. Eriko focused their attention on the city's nanobot swarms, reprogramming them on the fly. A shimmering field materialized around Zor, slowing his movements. The general's roars became muffled, his vine-like appendages struggling against the invisible force. "What have you done?" Zor growled, his words distorted and strained. We've created a dampening field, Eriko explained, their hands still moving across the interface. It's weakening your connection to the mutated plant matter. As Jor struggled against the field, a new threat emerged. The chamber's systems flickered and sputtered, holographic displays warping with static. Eriko felt a foreign presence invading the network, disrupting their carefully orchestrated processes. Dr. Vex, Eriko realized, their eyes widening. She's interfering with the core systems. Through the city's network, Eriko could sense Vex's chaotic presence. Her body, now fused with the biotechnology, lashed out wildly, sending tendrils of living circuitry through the city's infrastructure. Every erratic pulse threatened to undo Eriko's progress in stabilizing the surface world. Eriko's mind expanded, tapping deeper into the city's vast database. As they sifted through millennia of accumulated data, a startling discovery emerged. Hidden within the mainframe were the original genetic templates for both humans and Tak, preserved from ancient times. A plan formed in Eriko's mind, complex and daring. They began manipulating the genetic templates, creating a specialized nanobot swarm programmed with the original human and Tak genetic codes. Zara, Commander Steele, brace yourselves, Eriko warned. We're about to attempt something unprecedented. With a thought, Eriko released the swarm. It flowed from every surface of the chamber, a glittering cloud that engulfed the rampaging Zor. The general's roars turned to screams as the nanobots went to work, breaking down his mutated form at the cellular level. The sight was both fascinating and horrifying. Zor's monstrous body twisted and contorted, plant matter separating from flesh, bones reshaping themselves. In a matter of minutes, the fearsome hybrid was reduced to his original Tak form, collapsing unconscious to the chamber floor. Incredible, Zara breathed, her tendrils waving in astonishment. Eriko didn't pause to celebrate. They immediately redirected the nanobot swarm towards Dr. Vex's location, guiding it through the city's tunnels. When it reached her, the process began anew. Vex's wildly mutating form, fused with cables and biotech, gradually stabilized into a unique human Tak hybrid. With the immediate threats neutralized, Eriko turned their full attention to the surface world. Through the city's sensors, they could see the aggressive forest growth receding, revealing the Tak cities and human outposts that had been engulfed. Eriko fine-tuned the nanobot swarms, programming them to restore the planet's ecosystem to a balanced state. They watched with satisfaction as the surface transformed, a harmonious blend of human, Tak, and native flora taking shape. As the crisis abated, Eriko felt a shift in the plant creature guardian. Its massive form began to disperse, its consciousness merging with the city's systems. It became a living interface, bridging the gap between the ancient technology and the newly stabilized ecosystem. Eriko took a deep breath, knowing their task was nearly complete. They initiated the separation process, preparing to disengage from the mainframe. As they did so, they transferred a copy of their combined knowledge and abilities into the city systems, ensuring the newfound balance could be maintained. It's time, Eriko said, their voice a mixture of anticipation and reluctance. As Eric and Cleo's forms slowly began to separate, the core chamber's systems reconfigured around them. A new interface materialized, designed to be operated by both species working in tandem. The process was disorienting, a whirlwind of sensations as two minds became distinct once more. Eric felt the cool chamber air on his skin, while Cleo's leaves rustled with newfound sensitivity. They blinked, adjusting to seeing through individual eyes again. As the separation neared completion, Eric and Cleo shared a look of profound understanding. Their bodies had changed, carrying echoes of their hybrid form. But more than that, their minds had been forever altered by the experience of true unity. Commander Steele approached cautiously, his expression a mix of awe and confusion. Eric? Cleo? Are you all right? Before they could respond, alarms blared through the chamber. On the holographic displays, new data streams appeared, indicating a surge of activity from the surface. The newly stabilized ecosystem was reacting in unexpected ways, presenting fresh challenges that would require their immediate attention. Eric and Cleo turned to face the displays, their newly enhanced minds already processing the incoming data. They knew their work was just the beginning. The dawn of a new era of human-talk-talk cooperation had arrived, and they would need to navigate its complexities together. As the alarms blared and the holographic displays flickered with new data streams, Eric and Cleo exchanged a knowing glance. Their bodies, still adjusting to the separation, tingled with residual energy from their fusion. Eric blinked, his vision sharpening as he processed the incoming information. He noticed a faint green tint to his skin, almost imperceptible but undeniably present. Beside him, Cleo's leaves rustled with heightened sensitivity, her plant-like appendages moving with newfound grace and precision. "We need to stabilize the surface ecosystem," Cleo said, her voice carrying a hint of Eric's timbre. Eric nodded, reaching out to manipulate the holographic interface. As his fingers danced across the controls, he marveled at how easily he interfaced with the city's systems, a lingering effect of their fusion. Commander Steele approached, his expression a mix of awe and concern. "What's happening out there?" "The ecosystem is rebalancing itself," Eric explained, his eyes fixed on the data streams. "But it's happening faster than we anticipated. We need to modulate the nanobot activity to prevent overcorrection." As they worked, the chamber filled with a flurry of activity. Human and talk scientists poured in, drawn by the unprecedented events unfolding before them. Among them was Prime Minister Zorn, accompanied by Earth's diplomatic team. "This is extraordinary," Zorn exclaimed, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. "We must establish a formal research initiative immediately." A human diplomat stepped forward, nodding in agreement. "We propose a joint project to be named the Symbiosis Project. Its goal will be to study and apply the ancient city's biotechnology for the benefit of both our species." Eric and Cleo shared another glance, silently communicating their approval. As they turned back to the interface, a shimmering figure materialized beside them, a holographic projection of the plant creature guardian, now fully integrated into the city's systems. "Greetings," the projection said, its voice a harmonious blend of rustling leaves and humming circuits. "I am here to assist you in accessing the city's database." As Eric and Cleo worked with the holographic guardian to stabilize the surface ecosystem, Prime Minister Zorn approached them. "Eric, Cleo, your unique experience and abilities make you the ideal candidates to lead the Symbiosis Project. Will you accept the positions of co-directors?" Before they could respond, a commotion near the chamber entrance drew their attention. Dr. Alara Vex, now a striking hybrid of human and talk physiology, was being escorted in by a security team. I want to help," Vex said, her voice a mix of persistence and uncertainty. "My actions were misguided, but my knowledge could be valuable to your research." Eric and Cleo exchanged a look, silently deliberating. After a moment, Eric spoke. "We'll need to keep you under close observation, Dr. Vex, but your expertise could indeed be beneficial." As the newly formed research team began to organize, Commander Steele approached Eric and Cleo. "I'd like to volunteer my team to provide security for the ancient city," he said. "We could also establish a training program for a joint human talk security force." Cleo nodded approvingly. "An excellent idea, Commander. It will foster further cooperation between our species." As the day progressed, Eric and Cleo found themselves at the heart of a whirlwind of activity. They coordinated research efforts, managed the city's systems, and continued to monitor the surface ecosystem's recovery. Throughout it all, they were acutely aware of the subtle changes to their bodies, Eric's enhanced photosynthetic capabilities, and Cleo's increased flexibility and sensitivity. As evening fell, they retreated to a quiet corner of the chamber for a moment of respite. Eric reached out, gently brushing one of Cleo's leaves. The contact sent a shiver of pleasure through both of them, a reminder of their deep connection. "How are you feeling?" Eric asked softly. Cleo's leaves rustled contentedly. "Different, but in a good way. It's as if I can feel the pulse of the city and the surface world simultaneously." Eric nodded, understanding perfectly. "I feel it too. It's like we're still connected, even though we're separate again." Their moment of intimacy was interrupted by a sudden alert from the city's systems. A holographic display materialized before them, showing a previously dormant section of the city lighting up with activity. "What is that?" Cleo asked, her leaves filled with concern. Eric's brow furrowed as he studied the readout. It looks like an ancient chamber, possibly part of a defense system. Its activation is causing interference with the city's equilibrium. As they watched, the energy signatures from the chamber intensified, sending ripples of disruption through the city's newly stabilized systems. Eric and Cleo shared a look of willpower, knowing that their work was a long way to go. "We need to investigate this chamber," Eric said, already moving towards the main interface. Cleo followed, her movements perfectly in sync with Eric's. "Agreed. Whatever this is, we can't let it undo everything we've accomplished." As they approached the interface, both Eric and Cleo felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through their bodies. The city's systems seemed to respond more intensely to their commands, but the effort left them feeling drained. "Did you feel that?" Cleo asked, her leaves trembling slightly. Eric nodded, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. "It's as if the chamber's activation is affecting us directly. We need to be careful." As they began to formulate a plan to investigate and neutralize the new threat, they couldn't shake the feeling that they might need to push their transformed bodies to their limits, and perhaps beyond their current limits. As they contemplated their next move, the energy surges from the newly activated chamber intensified, sending shockwaves through the city systems. Eric and Cleo exchanged a knowing look. Without a word, they reached for each other, their bodies drawn together by an unseen force. The familiar sensation of fusion washed over them as their forms merged once again, smoother than before but with a new intensity that took their breath away. Erico emerged, their hybrid body even more pronounced than in their previous fusion. Vibrant green patches covered their skin, intertwined with tok-tok tendrils that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. Their eyes, a striking blend of human and tok-tok features, glowed with an otherworldly light. They moved swiftly to the main interface, their enhanced physiology allowing them to process the influx of data at an astonishing rate. Erico's fingers danced across the holographic controls, manipulating complex biotech algorithms with ease. "The chamber houses a terraforming device," Erico announced, their voice a harmonious blend of Eric and Cleo's tones. "It's ancient tok-tok technology designed to transform entire planets." Commander Steele's eyes widened. "Can you shut it down?" Erico shook their head, tendrils swaying. "Not without risking catastrophic feedback. We need to reprogram it." As Erico worked, the chamber's energy emissions spiked, causing the ground to shudder. Alarms blared throughout the complex, signaling widespread disruptions. On the surface, chaos erupted. Reports flooded in of bizarre plant growth patterns emerging across the landscape. Hybrid species, born from the fusion of native flora and the terraforming energy, spread rapidly, engulfing buildings and infrastructure. Prime Minister Zorn's voice crackled over the comm system. "We're declaring a state of emergency. All available personnel are to assist with evacuation and containment efforts." Commander Steele snapped into action, coordinating with his team and tok-tok security forces. "We'll establish perimeters around the affected areas and begin evacuations immediately." As the situation escalated, a commotion near Dr. Vex's containment unit drew attention. The hybrid scientist's body convulsed, reacting violently to the terraforming energy. With a surge of strength, she broke free, her form rapidly mutating as she fled into the tunnel system. Erico felt the ripples of Vex's escape through the city's systems. "She's interfacing with the biotechnology," they realized, their brow furrowing in concentration. "It's complicating our efforts to control the terraforming device." The plant creature guardian, now fully integrated into the city's systems, engaged Vex in a virtual battle. The conflict manifested physically, causing sections of the underground complex to shift and reconfigure. Erico pushed deeper into the terraforming device's systems, their enhanced abilities allowing them to unlock hidden archives. As they sifted through the data, a startling revelation emerged. "This device," Erico breathed, their eyes wide with wonder. "It wasn't just meant to transform planets. It was designed to create habitats for a hybridized species, a combination of ancient tok-tok and compatible alien races." The implications of this discovery raced through Erico's mind. They made a split-second decision, redirecting their efforts from shutting down the device to refining its programming. "What are you doing?" Commander Steele asked, his voice tense. Creating a new future, Eriko replied, their fingers flying across the interface. A world where both pure and hybrid forms of our species can coexist. As Eriko worked, the strain on their fused form intensified. Their body began to flicker, the fusion threatening to break down prematurely. They gritted their teeth, pushing through the pain to complete the reprogramming sequence. In the research lab, Dr. Thora and her team analyzed the data streaming in from Eriko's fusion and the terraforming process. The energy signatures are remarkable, she mused. With controlled exposure, we might be able to achieve stable hybridization on a larger scale. The debate over the ethical implications of such a possibility would have to wait. For now, all efforts were focused on stabilizing the rapidly changing world above and below ground. General Zor, leading a team on the surface, marveled at the mutant flora spreading across the landscape. These new species, he reported back to the command center, they're unlike anything we've ever seen. If we can control them, the potential applications are endless. As Eriko neared the final stage of the reprogramming sequence, their body began to tremble violently. The fusion was breaking down, unable to withstand the immense strain any longer. With a final surge of effort, Eriko input the last command. The terraforming device hummed with newfound stability, its energy output smoothing into a controlled wave of transformation. In that moment, Eriko's form split apart. Eric and Cleo collapsed to the ground, their individual bodies further altered by the intense fusion and exposure to the terraforming energy. Eric's skin now bore a permanent green tint, while Cleo's plant-like features had taken on distinctly human characteristics. As they lay there, gasping for breath, the underground city shuddered with the energy of transformation. Above them, the world was changing, reshaping itself into something entirely new. A world where the lines between human and Tak were blurring in ways no one could have imagined. The fate of their planet hung in the balance, poised on the edge of a new era of evolution and cooperation. And as Eric and Cleo struggled to regain their strength, they knew that their journey was nowhere near the end. The terraforming device continued its work, its influence spreading across the surface, presenting new challenges and opportunities that would test the limits of their newfound unity. Abilities. As Eric and Cleo struggled to regain their strength, they knew that their journey was not nearly finished. The terraforming device continued its work, its influence spreading across the surface, presenting new challenges and opportunities that would test the limits of their newfound abilities. Slowly, Eric and Cleo regained consciousness, their bodies tingling with residual energy from the intense fusion and exposure to the terraforming process. Eric blinked, his vision adjusting to the dim light of the ancient chamber. He looked down at his hands, now a deep emerald hue with intricate leaf-like patterns etched across his skin. Beside him, Cleo stirred, her plant-like appendages now resembling slender, flexible limbs with a more human-like appearance. She flexed her new fingers, marveling at their dexterity. "Eric," she whispered, her voice a mix of awe and concern. "What's happening to us?" Before Eric could respond, a surge of data flooded their minds. The reprogrammed terraforming device pulsed with energy, sending waves of transformation across the planet's surface. They could sense the changes occurring above ground, feeling the emergence of new hybrid plant species as if they were extensions of their own bodies. Dr. Thora burst into the chamber, her eyes wide with excitement. "Incredible!" she exclaimed, her team of symbiosis seekers trailing behind her with an array of complex equipment. "The device's energy signatures are off the charts. We need to document everything." As the scientists set up their monitoring stations, Eric and Cleo struggled to their feet, their altered physiologies adapting to the new sensations coursing through them. "Dr. Thora," Eric called out, his voice slightly strained. "What's the situation on the surface?" The scientist's fingers flew across a holographic display. "It's remarkable. The new hybrid flora is spreading rapidly, but in a controlled manner. Commander Steele reports the formation of entirely new ecosystems that blend elements from both our worlds." Cleo's leaves rustled with concern. "And the population? Are they safe?" Dr. Thora nodded, her expression a mix of fascination and caution. "So far, yes. General Zor is leading expeditions to study the transformed regions. The new plant species appear to have extraordinary properties. Accelerated growth, medicinal compounds, even environmental purification capabilities. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the ancient city's systems. Eric and Cleo winced, their heightened senses amplifying the sound. A holographic projection materialized before them, showing Dr. Alaravex's consciousness spreading through the complex like a digital wildfire. She's interfacing with the terraforming device, Cleo realized, her leaves trembling. We need to stop her before she destabilizes the entire process. Eric nodded, a look of tenacity crossing his features. We have to re-enter the mainframe. It's the only way to counter her influence. Without hesitation, they approached the central interface, their altered bodies humming with energy. As they connected to the ancient systems, they felt themselves drawn into a virtual landscape of pulsing data streams and complex algorithms. In this digital realm, they could see Vex's presence as a chaotic storm of code, threatening to overwhelm the delicate balance they had achieved. Eric and Cleo moved in perfect synchronization, their shared experiences allowing them to navigate the complex systems with unprecedented skill. As they engaged Vex in this virtual battle of wills, they became aware of the plant creature guardian manifesting throughout the physical complex. Dense, biomechanical growths sprouted from walls and floors, creating barriers to contain Vex's spread. In the virtual space, Eric and Cleo pushed deeper into the city's systems, searching for a way to neutralize Vex's influence. As they worked, they uncovered hidden subroutines buried deep within the ancient code. Look at this, Cleo's virtual form called out, gesturing to a complex sequence of data. These subroutines, they're designed to guide controlled evolution of sentient species. Eric's eyes widened as he processed the implications. If we can activate and modify these, we might be able to stabilize the hybridization process for both humans and Tok. They set to work, their virtual forms moving in perfect harmony as they navigated the intricate programming. In the physical world, their bodies began to synchronize, mirroring the closeness of their digital collaboration. As they activated the modified subroutines, a surge of energy pulsed through the terraforming device. The ancient chamber shuddered, and a shockwave of transformation rippled outward, spreading across the planet's surface. Eric and Cleo emerged from the virtual interface, gasping as their consciousness returned to their physical bodies. The chamber around them had transformed, now overgrown with bioluminescent hybrid plants that pulsed in rhythm with the terraforming device. The air was filled with a sweet, invigorating scent that seemed to sharpen their senses and invigorate their bodies. Alarms blared throughout the ancient city as the full impact of the transformation began to manifest. Eric and Cleo exchanged a look, their bond stronger than ever. They knew that the consequences of their actions would reshape the future of both species, and they would need to guide their people through this unprecedented evolution. As they prepared to face the challenges ahead, a holographic message flickered to life before them. Prime Minister Zorn's face appeared, his expression a mix of awe and concern. Eric, Cleo, he began, his voice trembling slightly. We need you topside immediately. The surface, it's changing faster than we can track. And our people, both human and Tok, they're beginning to change too. Eric and Cleo shared a determined look. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Balance. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Eric and Cleo shared a determined look before pushing themselves to their feet. Their altered bodies still thrummed with energy as they made their way out of the ancient chamber. The corridors they traversed had undergone a startling transformation. Bioluminescent plants lined the walls, pulsing with vibrant hues that shifted in response to their presence. As they approached the central control room, the couple could hear the frantic activity within. Dr. Thora's voice carried above the din, issuing rapid-fire instructions to her team. Eric and Cleo entered to find the room abuzz with researchers hunched over holographic displays, their faces illuminated by the glow of rapidly changing data streams. Dr. Thora looked up as they entered, her eyes widening at the sight of their further altered forms. Eric, Cleo, thank goodness you're here. The changes are accelerating faster than we anticipated. Eric nodded, his emerald skin shimmering under the room's lights. We've made a critical discovery, Dr. Thora. The device contains evolutionary subroutines that could be the key to stabilizing the hybridization process. Cleo's plant-like appendages rustled as she added, if we can fine-tune these subroutines, we might be able to guide the transformation for both humans and Tok. Dr. Thora's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. Extraordinary. Let's get to work immediately. As the trio delved into the intricacies of the evolutionary code, alarms blared throughout the complex. Commander Steele's voice crackled over the intercom system. We've located Dr. Vex. She's integrated herself into a massive biomechanical chamber deep within the city. We're attempting to establish communication now. Eric and Cleo exchanged a concerned glance but remained focused on their task. The fate of both species depended on their ability to harness and control the terraforming process. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly, fine-tuning the subroutines to ensure beneficial and stable hybridization effects. The holographic displays surrounding them showed the rapid changes occurring on the planet's surface. New ecosystems sprang into existence, blending elements of Earth and the Tok homeworld in ways never before seen. General Zor's voice cut through their concentration. Control room, do you copy? We're witnessing something incredible out here. The new hybrid plants are transforming barren wastelands into habitable zones at an astonishing rate. Prime Minister Zorn's face appeared on a nearby screen, his expression a mix of awe and commitment. I'm authorizing the expansion of our joint colonies into these newly viable regions. We must seize this opportunity to secure our future. As Eric and Cleo continued their work, they became increasingly aware of a growing connection between them. The residual energy from their fusion pulsed through their bodies, creating a tangible link that transcended their physical forms. Cleo turned to Eric, her eyes shimmering with an otherworldly light. Eric, I think I understand now. To fully integrate these subroutines and ensure long-term stability, Eric nodded, completing her thought. We need to undergo one final fusion. But this time, it will be permanent, Cleo finished, her voice barely above a whisper. The gravity of the moment settled over them. Dr. Thora, overhearing their exchange, stepped back to give them space. The surrounding plants seemed to sense the intensity of their emotions, their bioluminescence pulsing in rhythm with Eric and Cleo's heightened awareness. Eric reached out, gently caressing Cleo's cheek. Her skin, now a blend of plant matter and human tissue, felt both familiar and alien beneath his touch. Are you ready for this? He asked softly. Cleo leaned into his hand, her eyes filled with commitment and love. With you, always. They embraced, their bodies responding to each other in new and intense ways. The plants around them began to glow brighter, forming a cocoon of pulsating energy. As their lips met in a passionate kiss, they felt the fusion process begin. Their forms began to merge, bathed in spectacular light that drew power from the terraforming device in the city's ancient systems. Waves of energy pulsed through the complex and across the planet's surface, reshaping the world in their image. Dr. Thora and her team shielded their eyes from the intense glow. When the light finally faded, they gasped in awe at the sight before them. Where Eric and Cleo once stood, a new being now emerged. Its body was a perfect harmony of human and Tok traits, with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Adaptable appendages that could serve as both limbs and plant-like tendrils extended from its form. The being opened its eyes, which glowed with an inner wisdom and power. When it spoke, its voice was a melodious blend of Eric and Cleo's tones. I am Ekleon, it said, interfacing seamlessly with the city's systems. And together, we will guide our people into a new era of symbiosis. As Ekleon began to fine-tune the terraforming process, establishing a balanced ecosystem to support both pure and hybridized lifeforms, the ancient city hummed with renewed purpose. The transformation that had begun with a chance encounter between a human and an alien plant girl was now reshaping the very fabric of their world, promising a future of unprecedented cooperation and shared evolution.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.